Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. We'll be making some polymer clay flowers today. You will see that I have listed the tools and materials I used to create this beautiful flower on screen. You can use pens and such if you want. It doesn't have to be the exact tool. So the polymer clay I used was from Sargent Art, Sculpt It. And inside you find these cylindrical pieces. You cut off the desired amount that you need to create the flower. The more you use is the bigger the flower, so be sure to plan out your design. You can store the rest so it doesn't dry out and you can use it for another project or something. Right? So gently squeeze and smooth the piece you will work with. Dab a bit of water from the tips of your finger to the clay. As you can see, it is very soft and pliable. And when you get rid of all the bumps and fissures, you can begin to pinch at the clay and really work it in. When you have this nice, smooth, cylindrical piece, then you can pinch the sides and start creating a rough star shape. Now you can gently pull some of the clay to the center of one side into a small point. That's where you're going to hold on to the flower while you work on it. And that can be used to fix it to a surface that you want. Let's say you're creating a small sculpture. You'll use that as the point to fix it onto whatever you're doing. Also, make sure that your work surface is really clean, because this thing will pick up all debris and lint, even cat hairs. I have a very inquisitive cat, so I have to really watch out. Now, what I'm using here is a blunt end of the pottery needle, and I made a hole or a small dent in the middle of the star at the top. And then I work in the sides by pushing in a bit. And then I use a smaller part of the needle now to push in a little bit more, but be very gentle, because you can cut into this really quickly, and you don't want it to cut all the way through, because then it will, once it dries, it will fall apart, and you don't want that. As you work, just keep working on that little indent you have at the front, because it will disappear over time if you're not careful and if you don't pay attention to it. So what I'm doing here is I'm flattening the areas that I'm going to put the petals. Not too much, just enough so that I don't have to do any overworking afterwards. I do that with each one. And then I pinch the ends. You can see here, I pinch the ends just to make a small point, because you know, petals, especially for this kind of flower, they have a bit of a point at the end. Not too much, but just a little bit. You want to try to make your flower as realistic as possible. Okay, so again, make sure the indent is there. So what you're going to do now is gently pull the petals apart. Don't pull too hard. No, okay, you'll pull it off. And then using the pointed end of the needle, just make a line in the middle of each petal. And again, you have to be very gentle here, because if you push too hard, you will push right through the mold. And here you saw my very inquisitive cat a while ago. Yes, just make sure that that little tip is on the end at the back. So what you'll do now is just make a smaller hole in the middle there with the stylus. Now with most moldable objects, when you're working with it, the more you work with it, you smush one part. When you're not touching, another part, you smush the other side. So just be mindful. What I'm doing here is the blunt end of my needle. I'm rolling it on the edge of each petal. Not to the center, but to the edge. The thinner you can get it, the more it curls. So don't be afraid to go in. Just bear in mind you're keeping it to the edge of the petal, not to the middle. Because if you go to the middle, you're just going to make a very flat petal. You don't want that. You want it to look as realistic as possible. You see that? So while you roll, it curls up. A very beautiful effect. So now that I've curled all the edges, I'm gently pulling apart each petal because I don't want them to stick. And then now I can bend them how I want. So to make it even more realistic, I can bend them up, I can bend them down, I can turn them sideways. See? And now what I'm doing is making sure those lines I made in the petals are still there and they're not smooshed in. And always make sure that indent in the middle is still there. And there you have it. All done. And this one here is one that was done before, and it is dry. You can see the edges, how they've curled, and that's the little piece on the back. Right? You can see the edges, they're a bit rough. So what you can do is you can sand them down with sandpaper or even a small file just to get them really smooth.